this morning are from Juan Ramon Jimenez. I apologize, I do not speak Spanish if I didn't have his name correct. I am not I. I am this one walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and at times whom I manage to forget. The one who remains silent while I talk. The one who forgives sweet while I hate. The one who takes a walk when I'm indoors. The one who will remain standing when I die. Welcome this glorious and cold morning to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Whidbey Island. Whatever brings you here this morning, I hope you find a little bit of your needs met, whether in a spoken word, a musical note, or a smile. At least for a few moments, here at the beginning of our service, turn on your videos and look around the proverbial Zoom room. Wave, grin, blow kisses to each other. On this cold morning, we need each other. Many of us have not left our homes for 3 days. For some of us here on the South End, it is dangerous to even walk to the mailbox. My name is Tara Anderson, and I am delighted to be here. I am filled with gratitude this morning, most especially for you being here on Zoom. Thank you for creating a community where I, personally, find sanctuary and encouragement, challenge and inspiration. I'm filled with gratitude for everyone who rallied and figured out how to do this service from the sanctuary this morning and keep you safely at home off the icy streets. Thanks especially to Tom Pocock for jumping in because J. Taxony Hewitt is iced in. And I'm always grateful to the countless generations of Native peoples who wisely and carefully stewarded this land. It is sacred land, which we are now blessed to call home. May we learn to be as judicious, loving, and careful with that land for future generations. An announcement. Kate Nunn tells me our enthusiastic bidding at the auction surpassed the board's goal of $10,000. 72 people bid. There were 42 events like singing, listening to music, playing games, baking, gardening, hiking, bird watching, dream catching, dining, and even sipping tea. I'm not sure how you do it on Zoom, but give each other a high five. And a vigorous applause, please, to everyone who organized the auction, cooked, set up, and cleaned. It was amazing to gather together that way again. And now, let us co-create worship together. For us, worship is meaning-making in community. And here we are. Ready? We're also blessed to have the Reverend Bruce Bode with us today, if only virtually. You will know him from previous visits here while he was the senior minister at Quimper Fellowship in Port Townsend. We've always enjoyed his presence. He offered this sermon, one he originally delivered at the Unitarian Universalist congregation in the University District this past summer. I hope we will have him again here in person, but I, for one, certainly welcome him this way as well. Reverend Bode suggested this quote from Frederick Buckner. All of us are judged every day. We are judged by the face that looks back at us in the bathroom mirror. We are judged by the faces of people we love and the faces and lives of our children and by our dreams. Each day finds us at the junction of many roads, and we are judged as much by the roads we didn't take as those we have. Indeed, I have two friends who are with me almost all the time. Sometimes one is louder than the other. Sometimes one of them is napping. It's hardest when I'm trying to make a decision and they're arguing. But present they are. What am I to do? Well, for one thing, I think hanging out here with you all helps me a lot. And I think Reverend Bode is going to give me, some counsel as well with his sermon.
We light our chalice this morning with these words from the late UU minister and author Robert French Levins. Holy and beautiful is the custom by which we gather on this Sunday morning. Here we come to give our thanks, to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones, to seek that which is authentic, and to serve integrity, beauty, and the qualities of life that make it rich and whole. Through this hour breathes the worship of all the ages, the sacred music of all history. Blessed are the ears that hear that eternal sound.
Please join me in speaking aloud our affirmation. Yes, even you at home. Speak it out loud, maybe even shout it as a declaration of the values that it is. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its practice. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. We're going to sing Winds Be Still. For those of you who have a hymnal, it's number 83. For some UUs, this hymn is about as close as we come to a prayer. The words themselves draw us outward and inward. Stillness, flight, and light become prayerful metaphors for our souls. Storm clouds pass, silence come. We certainly need this prayer for 2024. So let's breathe together in harmony and sing. Eileen, Darren, and Heather will lead us. You will be able to hear them sing, but not each other. So perhaps their enthusiasm will compensate for that loss.
Pass and silence come, peace grace this time with harmony. Fly, bird of hope, and shine, light of love, and in calm let us find tranquility. Bird fly, distant view, help us to sense life's mystery. Fly high and far, and lead us each to see how we move through the winds of eternity. shine bright and true, so we may join our songs in new sounds that become full symphony.
As Darren spoke so eloquently in our prelude, your life is a sham until you can shout out loud, "Hey world, I am what I am." What better place than here, in this safe place? We call it a sanctuary for a reason. What better place than here in this welcoming community to be yourself, to share what's working you as we begin this year, 2024. Thank you all for sharing. And I will close our joys and sorrows with these words. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain, and the soft, gentle coming of love. We have a new dedicated offering team comprised of Dave Kaufman, Remel Nunn, Gary Piazon, and Jane Spalding. Please thank them all when you get a chance. They will be helping us in the months to come to identify organizations with whom we want to share our Sunday plate. I understand they will be reaching out to all of us to get our ideas for groups who put our principles into action. This week, we will dedicate our offering to Island Senior Resources. One of our members just this last month needed their help with a wheelchair and other assistance equipment after a major surgery. Island Senior Resources helps people identify, understand, and access the services they need to live their best lives. They provide community meals, activities, learning experiences, and camaraderie at their drop-in facilities. They manage a Meals on Wheels program, and of course their senior thrift stores help us recycle, repurpose, and reuse good merchandise. Island Senior Resources is one of the community gems that makes Whidbey Island such a good place to live. Now, obviously, this offering is online today. Were you here, you could reach into your wallet and put a few bills into the passing basket. It's surprising how much that adds up to. We usually collect several $100s. It's a bit harder online. You could, of course, open another window on your computer and use the donate button on our website right now, but you will probably want to do that after the service. And it will be so easy to forget. So write yourself a note. Senior services is important to us all. Please give generously.
The Gaff by C.K. Williams. 1. If that someone who's me, yet not me, yet who judges me, is always with me, as he is, shouldn't he have been there when I said so long ago that thing I said? If he who rakes me with such not trivial shame for minor sins now were there then, shouldn't he have warned me that he'd even now devastate me for my unpardonable affront? I'm a child then, yet already I've composed this conscience beast who harries me. Is there anything else I can say with certainty about who I was except that he, could already draw from infinitesimal transgressions complex chords of remorse and orchestrate ever undiminishing retribution from the hapless rest of myself? 2. The son of my friends of my parents has died, and my parents, paying their call, take me along, and I'm sent out with the dead boy's brother and some others to play. We're joking around. and some words come to my mind, which, to my amazement, are said. How do you know when you can laugh when somebody dies? Your brother dies, is what's said. And the others go quiet. The backyard goes quiet. Everyone stares, and I want to know now why that someone in me, who's me yet not me, let me say it. Shouldn't he have told me the contrition cycle would from then be ever upon me? It didn't matter that I'd really only wanted to know how grief ends and why. Three, I could hear the boy's mother sobbing inside, then stopping, sobbing, then stopping. Was the end of her grief already there? Had someone in her told her it would end? Was someone in her kinder to her, not tearing at her as mine did, still does? Me, for guessing grief someday ends? Is that why her sobbing stopped sometimes? She didn't laugh though, or I never heard her. How do you know when you can laugh? Why couldn't someone have been there in me, not just to accuse me, but to explain? The kids were playing again. I was playing. I didn't hear anything more from inside, the way now, sometimes, what's in me is silent too. And sometimes, though never really, forgets. Now we'll hear from Reverend Bode.
This morning I invite you to join me in a journey of reflection on what I regard as one of the major paradoxes of our lives. It's a paradox that is nicely expressed in a single sentence from the Japanese Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki, and the sentence reads as follows: "You are perfect the way you are, and you could use a little improvement." To adequately characterize our lives, it won't do, it seems, to simply say you are perfect the way you are. We might be tempted to stop there, but no, we get a fuller picture of our life when we add the phrase, "and you could use a little improvement." These two forces are expressed as a contradiction, but it's one of those seeming contradictions, that is to say, it's what we call a paradox, dual powers that push and pull and strain and rub against each other, creating the friction, the energy, the tension that is our life. So let's take a look at this paradox, and I'm going to start with the second part, "and you could use a little improvement." This is the capacity that we humans have for judgment, for evaluation, for critique. It's the part of us that judges others, the world, and the nature of things. It's the part of us that judges ourselves, and it's the part of us that feels the weight of these judgments, both from others and from ourselves. I suggest that this capacity of judgment that finds a home in us is part of the creative urge and surge in all reality. Part and parcel of the infinite, unoriginated, forward-pushing creative urge. That's how Albert Schweitzer describes it. That is a creative urge that never rests, that always pushes forward to go beyond what presently is, and is forever dissatisfied with what presently is. Alfred North Whitehead, the philosopher, speaks of it as a threefold urge. It is the urge to live well, and to live better. Now, that inherent dissatisfaction with what presently is also expressed in a hymn that is in our hymnal. It's number 304 in our hymnal, and you should be happy that I'm not inflicting it upon you this morning, as it's very difficult to sing. But it's titled A Fierce Unrest. And here's the opening words from this hymn. A fierce unrest seethes at the core of all existing things. It was the eager wish to soar that gave the gods their wings. And the hymn ends with these words, sing we no governed firmament, cold, ordered, regular. We sing the stinging discontent that leaps from star to star. We find this element of judgment and stinging discontent already in the opening creation stories from the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Scriptures. There, in the beginning, the judgment is all positive. For we read in the very first chapter of Genesis that the Creator God, Yahweh, after nearly every act of creation, looked upon the object or entity just made and judged it good. And then, after everything is made, the Creator God, Yahweh, declares that it is all very good and sits down to rest and to enjoy the completed creation. So initially, the story does not report any dissatisfaction whatsoever on the part of the Creator. The Creator does not say, yes, good, but not great. Yes, good, but could be improved. Nothing of the sort. The Creator is immensely pleased with the creation, declaring, behold, it is all very good. In other words, it is perfect as you are. That positive judgment, however, that Sabbath rest, doesn't last very long. For just a few chapters later in the same book, the book of Genesis, there is another story. And this is a story that reports the Creator deeply regretting the creation he had made. And there we read, Yahweh regretted having made mankind on the earth, and his heart was grieved. I will rid the earth's face of mankind, my own creation, Yahweh said, and of animals too, reptiles, and the birds of the heavens, for I regret having made them. And then comes the legendary biblical flood that wipes out everything save Noah and those with him in his little floating boat. In other words, Yahweh the Creator is not just saying you could use a little improvement. Basically, Yahweh is saying, look, we've got to start from scratch here. So the mind of Yahweh, you may not be too surprised to learn, seems to reflect a conflict in our own minds, because that is often how it is at a time when we first create something or are enthusiastically involved in something. We're often quite proud of our work or pleased in our activity, caught up in it as we are. But then you know how it goes sometimes with the passage of time. The thing you created or the action you took, which seemed so wonderful at the time, doesn't seem quite so wonderful after a while, and you begin to see flaws in your work or in your actions, and you begin to imagine how it might have been done better, how it could be improved. And sometimes, after a longer passage of time and looking back upon your previous work or activity, you may find yourself muttering to yourself, I can't believe I once thought that was good. What an embarrassment. And so the very positive judgment in the beginning gives way to a very negative judgment later on. somewhat like artists or authors who are tempted to, and sometimes actually do, destroy or burn everything that they've created. On occasion, as a longtime minister, I've been close witness to persons who, in late life, look back upon their lives with severe negative judgment. And these are persons that others would judge to be simply beautiful, persons full of grace, who have lived rich and productive lives. And yet the individuals themselves do not feel this as the end closes in on them. And there are some lines from T.S. Eliot that speak to this regret that I have witnessed in persons of older age as they look back upon their lives. And these words I'm going to read are difficult, hard words, yet they seem to me to hit the mark. And so this is what Eliot says, somewhat sarcastically, cynically. Let me disclose the gifts reserved for age to set a crown upon your lifetime's effort. First, the cold friction of expiring sense without enchantment, offering no promise but bitter tastelessness of shadow fruit as body and soul begin to fall asunder. Second, the conscious impotence of rage at human folly, and the laceration of laughter which ceases to amuse. And then thirdly and last, and this is the part I'm thinking of most here, the rending pain of reenactment of all that you have done and been, the shame of motives late revealed, and the awareness of things ill done and done to others harm, which once you took for exercise of virtue. So this is part of our capacity for judgment. Something judges us so that often we feel we haven't measured up. We're found wanting. And this can be judgment turned inward, as in the poem The Gaff from C.K. Williams that I read earlier. At other times, of course, our capacity to judge is turned outward, so that we judge the actions and motives of others for both good and ill, and understandably not always in their presence. Life is complicated enough. And particularly in our earlier years, as we're trying to find our way in life and discover our identity, our judgment of peers, parents, teachers, and society can be devastatingly harsh. Also in our older years, too, as T.S. Eliot's words, rage at human folly, indicate. All right. Enough on the something that judges us. And so let's go to the other side of the paradox, and this is the something that accepts us. It's the part that affirms and embraces us. It's the part that says you are perfect the way you are. At the cosmic level, this is connected for me to reality simply being what it is, with no judgment in it at all. No good or bad, no right or wrong. Nature is what it is, and we are what we are. Reality, nature, being, God, use the term that works for you, simply is. Active, moving, always experimenting, always becoming, always pushing beyond itself, yes, but still, it is what it is, and we are what we are, namely part of this isness, or this suchness, to borrow a Buddhist term. Now, this suchness of things is represented in the Hebrew creation myth as the tree of eternal life, which is a symbol that stands in contrast to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which represents judgment. And this suchness of things has to do with a capacity within us that accepts ourselves and all things as they are, that values things as they are here and now, and not for what they yet might become. This is the power of affirmation that accepts us no matter what we've done or no matter what we will do. It's the power of affirmation and acceptance that the 18th century English slave trader John Newton discovered in his darkest hour, which he characterized as an amazing grace. And grace is the primary term that is used in Christian theology to get at this side of reality. A radiance of light typically experienced most keenly in our darkest times of feeling cut off, split off, and unworthy. The times when we feel negatively judged, either from without or from within, or both from without and from within. Nowhere that I know of has this experience of acceptance and grace been spoken of more eloquently than in a sermon from the Protestant theologian in the Lutheran tradition, Paul Tillich, and it was a sermon titled, "You Are Accepted." Here's some lines from that sermon. Tillich writes, "Grace strikes us when we are in great pain and restlessness. It strikes us when we walk through the dark valley of a meaningless and empty life. It strikes us when we feel that our separation is deeper than usual because we have violated another life, a life which we loved or from which we are estranged. It strikes us when our disgust for our own being, our indifference, our weakness, our hostility, and our lack of direction and composure have become intolerable for us. It strikes us when year after year the longed-for perfection of life does not appear, when the old compulsions reign within us as they have for decades, when despair destroys all joy and courage. Sometimes at that moment, a wave of light breaks into our darkness, and it is as though a voice were saying, "You are accepted. You are accepted. Accepted by that which is greater than you, and the name of which you do not know. Do not ask for the name now. Perhaps you'll find it later. Do not try to do anything now. Perhaps later you will do much. Do not seek for anything. Do not perform anything. Do not intend anything. Simply accept the fact that you are accepted." So that's the reality of grace, the affirmation that you are perfect the way you are. Really, you say, I should like to connect with such a place, with such a reality. But how can I enter such a place that of its nature transcends me and comes unbidden? And indeed, our ego self, our self of judgments, can't pry its way into this place because, yes, this place does transcend our ego. This something that accepts us was present before ego came onto the scene, and it will be present after ego departs. But perhaps it helps to know this, and to know that this place is always with us, in us, beside us, beneath us, above us, and between us. And perhaps it helps to know that it's not a place that needs to be, or even could be, purchased or earned. Rather, this is a place that catches us as we fall. It's a place that we discover as we surrender to it. It's a place that we enter as we let go of judgments. A place we find as we follow our breath. For we don't have to create our breath. We simply have to follow it. Finally, how do these two sides relate? The something that judges us and the something that accepts us. Sometimes we might like to try to ban all judgments, thinking it would be better to get rid of that side of the paradox. But that, I judge, is neither possible nor desirable. For by our power to judge and evaluate, we move forward the experiment of life and being. We become, as the phrase goes, co-creators with the creative process of all reality. Instead, it seems to me we need to find the proper place of judgment, which must, I believe, take its place within the larger reality of grace and acceptance. Perhaps by analogy, it's the kind of paradox that parents deal with in relation to their children. Namely, it's the combination of both unconditional love and conditional love, which are two different types of love. The unconditional love a parent has for a child surrounds and supports and embraces and carries the child. Then, within that expansive embrace is the conditional love, and this is the love that corrects and protects and pushes the child to develop the skills needed to survive and thrive in this world. So too, the relationship between grace and judgment is not, to my mind, ultimately an equal relationship. Ultimately, we rest in the power of acceptance and grace, which is to say, that in the theological duel between God as a God of judgment and God as a God of grace, it is the reality of grace that ultimately prevails. And this, incidentally, is especially the message of our universalist forebears. And so I suggest that the Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki has set up the paradox in the correct way. You don't start with the judgment saying you could use a little improvement, even though that's how I started my sermon today. But in our actual lives, you start with affirmation. You start with grace. You are perfect as you are. You are accepted as you are, without any conditions. And this acceptance then provides the environment for moving forward and possibly improving some of the conditions of your existence. And to the extent that we can feel, experience, and align ourselves with that something that accepts us, to that extent, we can also offer it to others. And I believe we have the power to do this. And so let me close my message with a poem that speaks to this power. It's a poem by Denise Levertov, and she's a poet, as some of you may know, who lived most of the last of her decade here in Seattle. She lived near Seward Park on Lake Washington with a view of her beloved Mount Rainier, and she is buried at the Lakeview Cemetery, which is not far south from here. But her poem is titled "The Fountain," which I think of as a fountain of abundant grace. And present at that fountain, presiding at that fountain, and safeguarding that fountain is a feminine presence, a goddess, if you will, who is eager for us to drink our fill. The Fountain by Denise Levertov. Don't say there is no water to solace the dryness at our hearts. I have seen the fountain springing out of the rock wall and you drinking there. And I too found before your eyes, found footholds and climbed to drink the cool water. The woman of that place, shading her eyes, frowned as she watched, but not because she grudged the water, only because she was waiting to see we drank our fill and were refreshed. Don't say there is no water. That fountain is there among its scalloped green and gray stones. It is still there and always there, with its quiet song and strange power to spring in us, up and out, through the rock.
Reverend Bode spoke of the grace that the 18th century English slave trader John Newton experienced in his darkest hour of self-judgment, an experience that he turned into one of our most well-known hymns and universally loved, Amazing Grace. It's number 205 if you have a hymnal. I realize that some of us stumble over the word wretch in the first verse. And yes, we humans are not wretches in our Constitution, but often we feel wretched or act wretchedly. And personally, I like to sing the song with a little extra exuberance. Please join Heather and Darren and Eileen. Sing with gusto there in the privacy of your own home, where you have no one who needs to judge you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found, was blind, but now I see.
'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed.
extinguishes our chalice, I offer some New Year's humor from Christina Solwitz. Good morning, and welcome to Flight 2024. Please make sure your positive attitude and carry-on gratitude are secure and locked in the upright position. All self-destruct devices, guilt, pity, anger, selfishness, pride, and resentment should be turned off at this time. All negativity, hurt, and discouragement should be powered down and put away at this time. Should you lose your positive attitude under pressure during this flight, reach up and pull down the good energy mask. The good energy mask will automatically be activated by a long, slow breath in and then out. Once your good energy is activated, you can assist others with getting their good energy mask on properly. Please be aware that there is no oversized emotional trauma baggage allowed on this flight. The captain has also turned on the no whining sign and has cleared us for takeoff. May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. And namaste.